Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this special briefing for our ABNY members with our special guest, Rick Cotton. He and I were hanging out late last night, and I was worried that I wasn't going to be up in time enough for today's very important briefing. So I'm very glad that we are both here. I was very honored to join him for a very special recognition, very well-deserved recognition from New York City and Company last night for all his great work, and we'll hear about that this morning. But thank you for joining us. Rick has actually played a big part in my life. He probably doesn't know this, but like most of you living in New York, if you've been here for the last 10 years, you might think that the Port Authority's sole job was transforming airports. As a Queens resident, using both JFK and LaGuardia airports, the work that he has done to transform both of those airports and continues to do has really impacted my life in a really positive way, not only personally taking the airports, but also the economic impact of both of those jobs. As you probably know, Rick Cotton became the executive director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey in August of 2017 and hit the ground running. Prior to his being executive director, he was working as the state's special counsel, a counselor for the governor for interagency initiatives, really focusing on sort of the infrastructure projects that we see today. Not only the airports, but Moynihan Train Hall, Penn Farley Complex, the new Tappan Zee Bridge, the expansion of Javits Center, and the MTA's Second Avenue subway project. But the really accomplished project that we're going to hear more about today is the comprehensive plan to redevelop and construct the whole new LaGuardia Airport, which was unveiled recently with the goal of really creating a world-class 21st century passenger experience. And if you haven't gone, even just to visit, even if you're not traveling, you need to go to see the modern customer amenities, to see the state-of-the-art architecture, the spacious gates. And it really is a place for public art. Many people miss that point. That project is an $8 billion project, which 2/3 of it was funded through private financing. So that's really important. In addition to that, while he was buttoning up LaGuardia Airport, Rick oversaw Newark Airport's $2.7 billion upgrade with terminal redevelopment program at Terminal A. And as Rick said last night, next stop JFK. With the new Terminal 1 and rebuilding the terminals at 4, 6, and 8, under the leadership of Rick Cotton, the Port Authority is embarking on an $18 billion transformation of JFK Airport, generating more than 10,000 jobs and significant economic impact for our city. And on top of all of that, he continues the work of the Port Authority, which includes keeping the region moving by air, land, rail, and sea. We miss some of those, just thinking about all the work around the airports. And this is really important because it keeps the people and the businesses of our region moving and continue to thrive. So with that, I'd love to turn the Zoom over to our very special guest, Rick Cotton.
Well, Melva, thank you very much for that introduction. It was good to be with you at the NYC and Co Gala last night, and it certainly is true that one of their awards last night went to the LaGuardia project. I was honored to be participate in that, which we did with our 2 public-private partners, but it was a great event. Good to be with you, and delighted to be here this morning in terms of discussing the Port Authority's agenda with respect to our 3 major airports. It is a truly historic time in terms of the Port Authority's investment in its airports. By the time the 3 projects, the 3 airport redevelopments that I'm going to describe, the Port Authority will have driven $30 billion, with a B, $billion of investment in our 3 major airports, and nothing close to that has happened in the at that scale in the history of the Port Authority. So I'm going to touch on each one, describe them briefly, and then happy to dig deeper into any areas that people would like to ask questions about. So let's start with LaGuardia. And it's our title for this project became A Whole New LaGuardia because that was precisely the intention. As has now become infamous, then Vice President Biden characterized LaGuardia as reminding people who entered it as a third world airport. What then became the plan was not to do this piecemeal, but to actually tear down every single passenger facility at the airport, with the exception of the landmark Marine Air Terminal, and build anew from the ground up. The airport advisory plan and vision plan, I should say the airport advisory panel, was appointed by Governor Cuomo in late 2014. And its vision plan was released in 2015. The project broke ground in 2016. As I said, what it called for is demolishing and rebuilding every single passenger facility, as well, incidentally, as rebuilding the entire 8-mile roadway network, taking the number of traffic lights on the airport from roughly 25 down to 3. Next slide, please. So we spent 5.5 to 6 years in construction. These were two $3 to $4 billion terminal projects, one on the west side of the airport terminal B and one on the east side of the airport terminal C. LaGuardia Gateway Partners was our private partner in Terminal B, and Delta Airlines was our private partner in Terminal C, and the Port Authority itself oversaw the $1.5 billion of new roadway construction. Important to remember that airport operations never stop. The airport operated pre-COVID, not only at what had been its historic levels, but virtually every month through 2019 was at record levels, despite the extraordinary construction that was taking place. And we put in place really extraordinary traffic management processes to keep the traffic moving. There are a few times for which we apologize to the traveling public where traffic did get a bit intense, but the record volumes were handled throughout the construction period. Next slide, please. For those of you who haven't been out to it, what did it involve? Well, we built 2 brand new terminals, more than 2.6, nearly 2.7 million square feet of new terminal space, 72 gates across 6 concourses, brand new parking garage, as I've said, more than 8 miles of new roadways, and one of the innovations in terms of the new airport was all of the passenger facilities moved 600 feet closer to the Grand Central Parkway, and by virtue of doing that, increased our ability to add aircraft taxiway space in order to have the layout of the airport be more conducive to aircraft moving in and out of their gates, and therefore reducing gate delays, which have historically plagued LaGuardia. Next slide, please. So the new LaGuardia open, airy terminal space, natural light, floor-to-ceiling windows, really striking views of the airfield, striking views to the east of Citi Field, Flushing Bay, and of the New York City skyline to the west. Next slide, please. We also strongly believe that it's important that public buildings that civic architecture be inspiring and appealing. And a key aspect of that have been public art installations. In this case, Terminal B sought the assistance of the Public Art Fund to commission art installations, and Delta worked with the Queens Museum in terms of their installations. They're all really striking. They produce a lot of Instagram and public comment, and we are making the art installation, the appealing and inspiring aspect of civic architecture, a major feature of Port Authority airports. Next slide, please. In addition, of course, a 21st century best-in-class technology and functionality, not only self-service kiosk, but hands-free, app-based check baggage drop, self-baggage drop, enormously more rapid baggage handling capability, even as TSA is screening not just hand baggage, but check baggage as well. The security throughput in terms of the security lines has been more than doubled. It's now 2 to 3 times what it used to be in both terminals, and Terminal C has a particularly advanced pilot of screening IDs to also speed travelers through security lines. Next slide, please. The concessions lineup is vastly different from what it was in the old LaGuardia, featuring many iconic New York offices, offerings. You truly know that you're in New York. These are not 2 terminals that could be anywhere. They are both intended to convey a sense of New York and the surrounding region. Larger gate areas, children's play areas, designated pet relief stations, private rooms for nursing mothers, and we've labeled it sensory management. This is a special room that is intended for individuals who may have some degree of autism, be uncomfortable in crowded spaces, but it's an area for them to get away from the crowds. And we are trying to think increasingly as we can in terms of serving special needs customers. Next slide, please. So here are some of the headlines and commentary in terms of the new LaGuardia, from disgraceful to breathtaking. Ready when you are. Terminal C is now an art destination. Hard to believe you're at LaGuardia. LaGuardia's high-flying makeover has travelers doing double takes. For those of you who haven't been there, let's take a look at this video so you have some sense of what is now there. And I should, before we go to the video, mention that LaGuardia is now regularly receiving awards in acknowledgement of its extraordinary changeover. UNESCO's Prix Versailles in 2021 labeled Terminal B as the best new airport in the world. You can see the awards from the National Academy of Construction, from the New York Urban Land Institute, the Design Build Institute of America, and as Melva and I were talking about last night, awarded NYC and Co's Visionaries and Voices Award for 2022. So with that, let's go to the video.
Overlooking Flushing Bay in northern Queens, a miracle of modern engineering has unfolded, beginning with the demolition of every passenger facility at LaGuardia Airport, with the exception of the historic Marine Air Terminal, and continuing with the construction of an entirely new $8 billion airport, all while maintaining full flight operations. A whole new and truly world-class LaGuardia Airport has risen, the nation's first new major airport in more than 25 years. A new and vastly larger state-of-the-art terminal on the western side of the airport opened in the summer of 2020, followed by a second breathtaking new terminal on the eastern side of the airport in spring of 2022. The opening of these new terminals marks the substantial completion of an extraordinary feat many said could never be done, building a whole new LaGuardia Airport that is truly world-class. The new terminals are vast, bright, airy, and filled with natural light. Floor-to-ceiling windows provide panoramic views of the iconic New York City skyline to the west and Flushing Bay and City Field to the east. Passengers can even watch airliners taxi beneath their feet as they walk to and from their gates across 2 pedestrian sky bridges. Soaring spaces inside the terminal set the stage for an array of monumental artworks from a diverse group of highly respected artists. Commissioned in consultation with the Public Art Fund in Terminal B and the Queens Museum in Terminal C, these artworks celebrate the diversity and the vitality of our region and represent an essential element of civic architecture that is both appealing and inspiring. Throughout the new airport, an exciting selection of world-class concessions feature both iconic New York favorites and beloved global brands. Adding to the unique experience, a one-of-a-kind water feature entertains passengers as they dine or shop. State-of-the-art check-in and security technologies means that travelers can get to and from their gates quickly and intuitively. Building the new airport 600 feet closer to the Grand Central Parkway created more space on the tarmac for airliners to taxi, reducing gate delays. And thanks to new airport roads with wider lanes and fewer traffic signals, vehicles move more efficiently around the airport. From curb to gate, the new LaGuardia Airport is a demonstration of our single-minded focus on providing a truly best-in-class experience. In building the new LaGuardia, the Port Authority championed an intensive and historic outreach to minority and women-owned business enterprises and to local businesses. The promise to take LaGuardia from worst to best has been realized. The new LaGuardia Terminal B was awarded UNESCO's prestigious 2021 Prix Versailles as the best new airport in the world. And in 2022, the National Academy of Construction awarded Terminal B its inaugural Special Achievement Award. A whole new LaGuardia Airport represents the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey's vision for what airports can be. Award-winning, best-in-class facilities worthy of the region.
Now, I suspect that most people listening to the Port Authority's announcement 7 years ago that it was going to build a world-class LaGuardia felt skepticism, if not total disbelief. Hopefully, if you get a chance to visit the new LaGuardia, you will see that the Port Authority has kept that commitment. So with that, we will move to Newark Liberty Airport. Our focus has been on three aspects of this. First, a state-of-the-art world-class new Terminal A. Secondly, centralized public parking and car rental facility. And third, a new Newark Airport air train, which the existing one is long overdue for replacement, and we are moving forward on that front. Next slide, please. So Terminal A, I'm pleased to say, completed construction, and Governor Murphy led a ribbon cutting 2 weeks ago. The first passengers will access Terminal A in about 30 days, but we did introduce what is really an extraordinary result. Light-filled, completely reimagined. The existing Terminal A, again, should have been many years ago. The new Terminal A, soaring floor-to-ceiling windows. It's nearly twice the size of the old Terminal A. And that in particular, it has a vastly improved arrivals frontage intended to speed passengers arriving at Newark Liberty on their way taxi cab, shared ride, private pickup bus as they leave the airport. Next slide, please. Here you have the picture of the arrivals and departure hall. As you can see, floor to ceiling window, bright, multiple ticketing counters, waiting for the departing passenger. You can't see it, but to the left is a vastly expanded set of security lines, which will move travelers through them much faster than we're able to do at the old Terminal A. Next slide, please. There are expanded gate areas with increased seating, kids' play areas, as well as world-class concessions with a particular focus on New Jersey offerings. Next slide, please. This is the one of the play areas, really quite extensive, and a very significant improvement over the old Terminal A. Next chart, please. And this is one of the new concessions, a sit-down dining concession in one of the gate areas. Again, you can see the natural light, you can see the brightness. What a change. Next chart, please. Technology really tried to achieve best in class. The new terminal is totally equipped with e-gates, allowing touchless, not only touchless check-in, but touchless clearance as you enter the jetway. Brand new baggage handling system, absolutely cutting edge screening technology, not only for carry-on bags and as you pass through security, but for checked baggage as well. Next slide, please. Again, inspiring public art, focused on local artists. Public Art Fund commissioned the large scale artworks, and 27 local artists are featured and were selected for display by the New Jersey Council on the Arts. Just to give you a sense, next chart. This is the larger than life mural at the arrivals hall, baggage claim area. Again, local artists, Lequanuna Yawar, really striking, really impressive. Many of those pictured are New Jersey individuals. Next slide, please. This is the largest public art installation. It is fully three levels high, very, very striking. Those are New Jersey images on metal rings, and it is a very, very striking and impressive piece of public art. Next slide, please. And this was the early reviews. First look, Newark's stunning new terminal, enough to change the airport's reputation. Art tells New Jersey stories at Newark's new Terminal A. The lead of the story, playing off of the recognition that the artwork at LaGuardia has got, was move over LaGuardia. And it really, again, as NBC noted, crowd pleasers abound. This is a new era of airport facility at Newark Liberty Airport. Next slide, please. So then just moving to JFK Airport, it is what is largely to come. It's important to realize what JFK is today. As you can see in terms of the two red rectangles, the old Terminal 3 site and the old Terminal 6 site have been vacant for years. The yellow rectangles are three terminals that are out of date and undersized. And it is those terminals that will be completely redeveloped as part of the JFK redevelopment. Next slide, please. So what the new transformation of JFK involves is 4 distinct public-private partnerships. Now, one of the challenges that this transformation faced was these 4 public-private partnerships were all fully negotiated, fully agreed to by the private partner and the Port Authority. And you have to remember the structure of these private partnerships is that the private partner agrees to finance the entire cost of the terminal rebuild, and the Port Authority takes on the airport infrastructure, meaning roadways, electric substations, garages. So we had all 4 fully negotiated. One actually broke ground at the very end of 2019. That was American Airlines Terminal 8. I'll come to that in a minute. But 3 were scheduled to reach financial close and start construction in the spring of 2020, April or May. COVID hits at the beginning of March. I'm sorry, they were scheduled to close and to begin construction in March to April of 2020. And COVID hits at the beginning of March, air travel completely collapses, and 3 of these deals, the 3 largest ones, get put on hold. The total goal here, and really the good news is that we have now got all 3 of those deals back on track. The total private investment will be $15 billion. The Port Authority will bring 2.9 billion in terms of the infrastructure I just mentioned. And it is really important in terms of the Port Authority being able to pursue this scale of redevelopment, to be able to leverage Port Authority capital dollars at a 5-to-1 ratio with private financing. So we are about to witness the investment of $18 billion in transforming JFK. Next chart, please. So four projects, as I mentioned: Terminal 8, American Airlines, British Airways. That actual expansion actually opened last week. British Air moved from Terminal 7 into Terminal 8. I'll describe that a little more in a moment. Terminal 4, which is Delta Airlines, along with terminal operator JFK IAT. We reached the new deal, reconstructed, put back together post-COVID in April of 21. It actually broke ground in December of 21, and it is moving along. It is under construction, and it contemplates Delta moving out totally of Terminal 2 in Q1 of 2023. New Terminal 1, we reached a new financial close in June of this year. New Terminal 1 broke ground in September and is fully on its way. Terminal 6, which is JetBlue, Vantage, American III, and RXR. New financial close. We put the deal back together literally last month, and it is now on track and on target to start construction in 23. So just a few more words about each of these projects that's now underway. Terminal 8, $400 million expansion of Terminal 8. It is American Airlines and British. 5 new wide-body gates, vastly expanded premium lounges, enhanced baggage systems, dramatically improved check-in. One of their goals is to facilitate a virtual shuttle service between American and British on the London to JFK route. That's a route that is literally $1 billion worth of tickets every year. And the other goal of the combination of the 2 airlines in Terminal 8 is to facilitate connections between the international routes with Americans' domestic routes. And Terminal 8 will see a major upgrade of its concessions over the next 18 months. Next chart, please. That is just simply a very quick new picture of one of the newly improved check-in areas of Terminal 8. Next chart, please. At Terminal 4, if you went back to the beginning of 2020, Delta had, and the Port Authority had agreed actually on a $3.5 billion rebuild in terms of Terminal 4. COVID drove this to be restructured. We reached agreement relatively quickly in 2021, but Delta decided to trim back for the moment at the time when it was very difficult to predict in terms of the rebuild of air traffic to a $1.5 billion expansion, but that is well underway. Delta will consolidate its operations in Terminal 4 with an expanded Concourse A, 10 new gates, significant investment in the existing terminal with new lounges, expanded seating, and new retail and food offerings. And they are targeting the completion in just under, well, roughly a year from now. Next chart, please. New Terminal 1. This is going to be the biggest terminal at the new JFK. We put together, as I've said, the new deal in June of this year with a new lead investor, Ferrovial, Spanish construction company, and investor and manager at Heathrow Airport. It will cover the sites of the footprint that included the sites of old terminals 1, 2, and 3. 2.4 million square feet of terminal space, 23 new, largely international gates. And our goal is to have the new Terminal 1, as I say, which will be the biggest at JFK, be one of the absolute best in class across the entire globe. Next chart. Terminal 6, we reached financial close literally this month. Cause for, I should say last month, literally within the last couple of weeks, cause for great celebration as it now has all 4 of the terminals back and underway. $4.2 billion project. It is adjacent to JetBlue's Terminal 5 and will cover both the empty lot that is the old Terminal 6 and will also extend across what is now the Terminal 7 footprint, which will be demolished to make way for this brand new terminal. 10 new gates, 1.2 million square feet. Next chart, please. A huge element of the Port Authority's approach to not only transforming and rebuilding its airports, but in terms of every construction project that we do, is to focus on the communities surrounding the airports and assuring that benefits accrue to them as part of these transformation projects. One of the heavy focuses on minority and women-owned business enterprises is to ensure that 30% of the contracting that is done in these projects goes to minority and women-owned business enterprises. And at LaGuardia, this is a done deal. More than $2 billion, closer to $2.2 billion awarded to minority and women-owned business enterprises as part of the LaGuardia project. More than $865 million awarded to local Queens-based businesses. At Newark, $685 million to minority and women-owned business enterprises, $213 million to local New Jersey businesses. At JFK, we aim to follow the same path and achieve equal or better results. We have a Community Advisory Council co-chaired by Congressman Gregory Meeks and Queensborough President Donovan Richards, with 42 members, all either elected officials or local leaders. One of the things we've already accomplished in terms of the two major terminal projects within JFK redevelopment is that there is a 30% minority equity ownership interest in these two projects. We have a very broad community agenda that we are pursuing hand in glove with the community council. Next chart, please. So to summarize 2022 and where we are, we have completed the Newark Terminal A. The whole new and award-winning LaGuardia is open for business, and our major focus now shifts to JFK. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that all 4 terminal projects are now advancing toward a whole new JFK. We are delivering on our commitment to build world-class airports worthy of the region. And with that, thank you for listening. And Melba, I will turn it back to you.
Thanks, Rick. That was great. So I'm just going to jump right into questions. I'll start with some overview questions, and then we'll go to some of the questions we received from our members when they've signed up, and then we'll open it up to Q&A here in the chat. So the 3 airport redevelopments, huge accomplishments. I mean, you talked about maintaining flight operations during the entire time, which is a huge feat. I appreciate dealing with the traffic issues because the airports were fully operational. So thank you for that. But what's really impressive is the sort of public-private partnerships that made it happen, right? I mean, huge investments from the private sector. And I think it's a model that we can look forward to moving forward. And this is sort of piggybacks off one of the questions from our young professionals who submitted a question in the Q&A. But I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts about, as we sort of head into a recession, and we know a lot of these projects would not be possible without that huge private investment. What do you think the implications are for the recession moving forward, not only completing the projects that are underway, but future redevelopment projects and infrastructure projects that the port has planned? Was that a tough one? Should I have sort of?
No, love that question. We are a firm believer in public-private partnerships for several reasons. The financial one is pretty straightforward. And part of it actually relates to seeing this at least potential for recession. And as we collectively think about coming out of COVID and coming out of the financial challenges that created, these airport deals, these infrastructure deals are 30 to 40 year commitments contractually. They're building facilities that are intended to last at least that long and hopefully longer. What that means is, and the airports, one aspect of many of the infrastructure facilities that are being built is that they generate revenue. And that's an important thing to understand. So that what the structure of these public-private partnerships is that the private partner gets a 30 to 35 year lease or contractual commitment from the Port Authority that they will be operating the facility. And as they operate it, they will generate revenue and profit, which will justify their investment at the front end of the construction dollars. And for the Port Authority, that means with our scarce capital, and that's true of all public agencies, we can leverage our capital to enable private financing to come in, make the capital investment, and then gain a justify the investment based on the return that they will earn over a long period of time. So the financial aspect, very important. Second aspect is that government has to recognize what it does well and what it does not do well. And the private sector, as one looks at it, what it does is it does construction. There are construction companies, obviously, there are developers who oversee construction, and they are skilled at it. They're incentivized to be good at it. Government, that's not what government does. So relying on the private sector skills that a public-private partnership brings to the table in terms of overseeing construction, doing construction, and operating facilities with a customer focus, reaching into, make use of, and draw upon that expertise is a positive from the point of view of delivering quality public services. Now, there's a very important role of the public partner in this, which is to set standards and hold the private sector to the standards. You can't walk away. You can't get into the mindset, and sometimes this happens, is, well, it's not my job at the public agency. I just contracted it away to a private partner. No, the public agency has to set standards, has to monitor the performance of the private partner, have to be metrics set in advance, and the public partner has to be active in ensuring that the delivery is measuring up to the commitments that have been made. But that public-private partnership is very dynamic and very positive. So from the Port Authority's point of view, it is really delivering dividends.
Thank you, Rick, for that. And I really appreciate your emphasis on sort of the public part of that partnership and sort of the public accountability. Because, you know, from my previous roles in government and working around redevelopment projects, especially public ones, you know, the public wants to know who do they go to when there's an issue, right? And,
Right.
you know, it is, you know, as a public official, our responsibility, it's government's responsibility to say, yes, we've contracted with this private developer to do these improvements, but we want to make sure that X, Y, and Z happens. So I'm really appreciative of your comment and your focus on that. And that leads me to, I guess, a follow-up related question about the investment in the airports, and your point about sort of the Port Authority's investments was really in the infrastructure, like the road beds. And again, it makes sense, right? Because government has that holistic, comprehensive view of the impact of the improvements and what's needed to make sure that the project moves smoothly. And we have a question from one of our members who really wanted to understand sort of the financing portion, the Port Authority's financing portion of the infrastructure, if there were any city, state, or federal funds in that. Did you leverage any of the bills that were passed for infrastructure, and how was that financed?
Well, the answer is that we tried. But the fact is, this was Port Authority capital. Take one step back. The Port Authority, for the 100 years that it has since it was founded, has been self-sustaining. Port Authority was founded as a self-sustaining agency. It has never received on a regular basis tax monies from the state of New York, from the state of New Jersey, or from the federal government. So, and it has therefore self-financed. We receive revenues. Our revenues exceed our expenses. We put every penny of that into our capital plan and our capital projects, so it's constantly reinvested. But our revenues come from our contracts with terminal operators. They pay us rent. It comes from anyone who is doing business on at our facilities. So we generate about 2/3 of our revenue from business relationships. And then 1/3 comes from tolls and fares and fees. So it's internal. We did, in the COVID era, we did try to urge the Congress to direct some of the infrastructure funding toward the Port Authority for a variety of reasons that happen in a small way, but not a large way. So these projects really did not have tax funding from outside the Port Authority.
Very interesting. Didn't realize that. Thank you. Thank you for that. So now I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about sort of the impact of not only the development of the airports, but the airport's operations on the local communities, right? You talked about sort of the great work in the procurement of MWBEs and local businesses and all of the projects, but specifically, I think LaGuardia was really impressive. And then you talked about sort of the owner stake in Terminal 1 at JFK, right? So we always talk about it's great to give contracts and to give business, but actually having a real ownership stake in something that's so transformative is really important. Can you talk a little bit about maybe future plans of encouraging more sort of ownership opportunities in Port Authority projects throughout the region?
Well, our focus is on this commitment to bring benefits to communities that surround the airports, and really to ensure that our business practices are completely inclusive, trying to remedy what have been historic disparities. So these large projects come along not in a regular flow, but they come along in a bit an ebb and flow. And we happened, as I said, this is a extraordinary moment in the history of the Port Authority in terms of the amount of investment and the projects that are on the table and coming to fruition. So they don't necessarily happen on a regular basis, but we are on the alert to see where, whenever the business proposition at hand will enable the possibility of achieving minority and women-owned business participation at a 30% level, to take advantage of that. The equity participation by minority businesses in the Terminal 1 and Terminal 6 project at JFK was part of that commitment. That large an equity investment by minority businesses is really, it's almost unique, and as far as I know, in terms of actually implementing a policy like that. But we will be focused on trying to identify those opportunities as additional projects come online.
That's great. And also really the Port Authority's commitment to local hiring has also been amazing. I mean, I sat on the board of Council for Airport Opportunities for many, many years, and it was created but funded by the Port Authority and the airlines to match local residents with the opportunities on airport and off airport if related to the port. So, you know, the Port Authority's commitment not only to the procurement for small businesses have been really impressive, but also the local hiring because of the impact and influence of airports in these local communities. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna ask, what's next? We talked about JFK. And, you know, again, we love to think the Port Authority is all Queens, or I love to think it's all Queens or all New York City. But you guys do work on a lot of different projects to keep the city moving forward. So after JFK, what are some of the next big projects for the port?
Well, just to finish with the airports, Newark Liberty, we just awarded a contract to develop a master plan for the future of New York, of Newark Liberty. So there will be coming additional chapters beyond the brand new Terminal A. We're committed to a brand new Newark Air Train. So much focus on Liberty to round out the investment at the airports, remembering that we've currently got about more than $5 billion worth of new facilities already underway there. The bus terminal is probably the next big big thing to mention. The Port Authority Bus Terminal, Midtown Bus Terminal, originally started in 1950. So now nearing the end, honestly, of its useful life. It probably should have been replaced long ago. We put a brand new plan in place. That is a major facility on the west side of Manhattan. And that has the same ambition in terms of minority and women-owned business. It has the same ambition in terms of community involvement. We are in the midst of the environmental impact statement process, and we will be pushing that ahead very vigorously. There is a $2 billion restoration of the George Washington Bridge, which is underway. And we will be focused on carrying that through to its conclusion. We have a very active, we are actually just completing the installation of all electronic tolling at our Hudson River crossings. The GWB completed its conversion earlier this year in the Lincoln Tunnel, which will be the 6th and final location of that conversion. Actually will be happening in, looking at the date, 5 days. So we are really focused on ensuring that we upgrade our facilities. And I think I should also mention the seaport, which is actually during COVID, it has had record cargo volumes. And indeed, in the last 3 months, our port, which has historically been either the second or third, it's always been the busiest on the East Coast, but it's been the second or third busiest in the country, behind Los Angeles and Long Beach, has actually been the busiest in the entire country. So we much of that has been due to prior investment by the Port Authority, and we want to maintain that kind of cargo handling capabilities, and that will require additional investment as well.
That's great. And, you know, there's a lot happening around rail, and I don't know if you want to address any of the Ports Authority work around rail, improving and modernizing the railways.
Well, we operate the PATH commuter rail system, which serves northern New Jersey and the west side of Manhattan. And we are looking, we have had what we've called a path improvement plan to increase capacity. Historically, PATH has been 8-car trains, and we have had a variety of construction projects on the PATH stations and invested in new rail cars in order to be able to move that system toward 9-car trains. We've invested in a brand new signal system to enable trains, if needed, to run more frequently. So we're looking at a capability to increase capacity by 40% on the Newark to World Trade Center line. We want to line that up with the COVID impact. PATH at this point has about 55 to 60% ridership compared to pre-COVID, but we don't obviously want the trains to be as packed in light of COVID. So we are looking certainly as quickly as we can in terms of implementing expansion of that kind of expansion, which is fairly unusual, to be able to increase the capacity of an existing line by 40%.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, we here at ABNY are constantly thinking out of the continuous growth of the city, especially coming out of COVID, and where the potential expansion for transportation options. And as we think about projects like Gateway, and we think about other projects that will bring folks into the region to help boost the economy, was thinking about sort of the operation of the PATH trains from the Port Authority. So thank you for that. So we'll wrap it up. I just have one last question. It's a much broader thinking question. Just off of your comments around the improvements around the bus station, and thank you for that, because that was one of the questions that came up in the chat. Again, here in the city, we're really thinking about how to reimagine commercial corridors, as we address some of the issues of, less office workers and some of the quality of life concerns. I think there's a real opportunity to think creatively around transit-oriented development, and I think the bus terminal has a great potential of being a huge player in that. So just wondering if there's any thoughts or conversations happening with any other partners around either rethinking what the plans for the bus terminal could be, or how the original plans will actually help revitalize, I guess, Midtown West a little bit.
Well, part of a revised proposal that the Port Authority, or plan that the Port Authority put on the table almost 2 years ago at the beginning of 2021 was had two brand new aspects to it at that time. One was to respond to concerns of the community and of the city about two sets of buses that were clogging local streets. One was inner city buses, largely the budget bus lines, who were picking up and dropping off on the street, so that those buses were totally utilizing local streets. They were stopping, they were discharging passengers, they were idling while they waited for their departure time. The second is that the Port Authority bus terminal itself has a certain, in order to maintain the capability of moving large numbers of bus passengers, largely commuters, in and out of the city, requires multiple buses an hour to use each one of the Port Authority terminal's gates. And what that means is that a bus has to arrive at that gate just as the prior bus is leaving. It can't simply pull in anytime it wants. So that means that buses frequently have to wait outside the bus terminal, their turn to come into their gate. And many of those buses were, again, idling on the local streets. And by the way, some of them would come in the morning rush. They'd have no place to park, so they go back to New Jersey and then come back in. Not good for the environment. So the result of both of those is that our plan for the bus terminal includes a so-called storage and staging facility, brand new building, additional building that would be built adjacent to the west of the existing bus terminal. And that would enable these intercity buses that were picking up and dropping off on the street to come into that facility, so they weren't clogging local streets. And it would also allow buses that were waiting their turn to come into a gate at the terminal to wait in this additional facility and not be on the street. So as we expanded the concept in response to the community, we also added exactly what you referred to, transit-oriented development, which is we proposed largely because of the funding needs to pay for the expanded facility, additional development, air rights, buildings. These were probably going to be commercial buildings, but on the other hand, they would be being built atop of the bus terminal in terms of easy access by transit, and of course that area, which is the Times Square area, well served by subway lines, and therefore the ability of workers to get to and from buildings very, very directly related to transit facilities. So both from the point of view of response to the community and this notion of having both commercial as well as residential capabilities near to transit, that was the intent of proposing additional commercial buildings built over the bus terminal facilities.
That's great. That's great. Well, Rick, thank you so much for that detailed presentation today, not only on the airports, but also the other Port Authority assets and projects. Really appreciate it. You are always welcome as a guest here at ABNY because you give us such great information and updates on very important projects in the region. And we can't wait to host you again.
Well, thank you. Very good to be with you, Melva.
All right. Thanks, ABNY members, for joining us this morning.